In the ancient lands of Africa, back when the world was so new that animals could talk, there lived a creature that everyone else pretty much overlooked. He was slow, his house was on his back, and he always seemed to be staring at the ground. This was the tortoise, a quiet, patient fellow who seemed wise, like he was keeping some old secrets. Most animals respected him, maybe even felt a little sorry for him, because he moved so deliberately in a world that loved being fast. But here's the thing about a humble appearance. Sometimes it's hiding the sharpest mind. This is a story whispered on the savannah winds, a tale that elders still tell wide-eyed children around a crackling fire. It's a powerful warning about how the most unassuming characters can be the most dangerous tricksters. And it's the reason why, even today, you should probably never fully trust a tortoise. Once upon a time, the African plains were teeming with life. The animal kingdom was this incredible mix of strength, beauty, and song. The lion's roar owned the morning, the gazelle's leap was pure poetry, and the giraffe could nibble the tastiest leaves from the highest branches. But the creatures everyone envied most, the birds. You had the eagle, with eyes so sharp he could spot a falling leaf from a mile away. His powerful wings could catch the wind and carry him right up to the sun. Then there was the parrot, a flashy streak of emerald and ruby, who was incredibly proud of his looks and could mimic any sound he heard. And of course, there were the finches and sparrows, whose chattering was basically the soundtrack of the forest. They lived in a world of total freedom, high above the dust and dirt of the ground. And then there was Mbekwu, the tortoise. Mbekwu's entire world was the ground. He knew the smell of damp earth after rain and the location of every single tasty mushroom. He moved with a slowness that other animals found almost painful. They'd race past him, kicking up dust, sometimes laughing, sometimes shouting a bit of pity. "Hey, Mbekwu," an antelope might call out, "the sun will be down before you even reach the river." Mbekwu would just give a slow, deliberate nod and keep on plodding. But don't let the slow walk fool you. Nothing that happened in the animal kingdom escaped his notice. He was paying attention, and he was cunning. One day, a ripple of pure excitement shot through the kingdom. A message had arrived, carried on the sweet scent of the clouds themselves. The sky spirits were throwing a great feast. This wasn't just any party. It was a legendary event with tables piled high with fruits that tasted like sunlight and rivers of sweet, sparkling palm wine. And all the birds of the air were invited. The birds went wild with excitement. They started preening their feathers, polishing their beaks, and practicing new celebration songs. Down on the ground, Mbekwu watched all of it. He saw their joy, he heard their songs, and he could almost smell the tantalizing aroma of the feast drifting down from the sky. And while the birds were chirping with glee, a completely different feeling started to grow in Mbekwu's heart. It wasn't joy. It was a cold, hard stone of envy. For days, the feast was all Mbekwu could think about. He imagined the taste of celestial yams and dreamed of the cool, intoxicating palm wine. But every single time, his dream was crushed by reality. He was a creature of the earth. His legs were short and stubby, and his shell weighed him down. He couldn't fly to the sky any more than a fish could climb a tree. He listened to the birds chattering about their travel plans, talking about the long flight and the beauty of the world from above. Their words felt like sharp little stones being thrown against his shell. He felt unseen, forgotten, and worst of all, underestimated. Mbekwu truly believed he was smarter than any of those feathered fools. What was an eagle's strength or a parrot's vanity compared to a mind like his? Yet they were the ones who would feast, while he was left behind with the dirt and the worms. That's when a fire started to burn in his slow, steady heart. It was the fire of pure resentment, the feeling that this was all deeply unfair. And it was that fire that cooked up the first pieces of a plan so unbelievably bold, only a mind like Mbekwu's could have dreamed it up. He started watching the birds, not with envy anymore, but with cold calculation. He saw the eagle's pride and the parrot's vanity. He saw their community, their unity, as something he could twist and use. They all saw him as a slow, harmless old tortoise. And he realized that wasn't his weakness, It was his greatest strength. He wasn't going to beg. He wouldn't demand a thing. He would use his smoothest voice, his most humble posture, and his most persuasive words. He would make them think that helping him was their own noble idea. He'd pretend to be a changed tortoise, one who had learned his lesson about humility and unity. The plan began to click into place. His goal wasn't just to get to the feast. His goal was to teach the birds a lesson they would never forget, and in the process, take every last bite for himself. The morning of the feast arrived. The birds were all gathered at the base of a giant tree, a fluttering, chattering sea of color. And that's when Mbekwu made his move. He approached the group slowly, with his head bowed, making his steps seem heavy with a sadness he didn't really feel. He stopped in front of the eagle, the leader of the flock. "Oh, noble birds of the air," Mbekwu began, his voice a low, mournful rumble. "I've come only to wish you well on your magnificent journey. My heart soars with you, even if my body is stuck to this humble earth." The birds quieted down, surprised to see him. "You don't know me," Mbekwu continued, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "But I've learned a great lesson in my long, slow life. A creature who makes trouble for others is also making it for himself. I am a changed tortoise." He let that sink in. Then he looked at the crowd, his eyes appearing to fill with tears. "How beautiful you all are. A real family of feathers. As you fly to the feast, wouldn't it send a powerful message of unity to all animals if just one of us from the ground could be there? It would be a bridge between the sky and the earth." His words were like honey. The birds started murmuring. The eagle was a proud bird, but he was a sucker for a grand gesture. The parrot loved the idea of looking generous. But Mbekwu asked a sensible dove, "How could you come with us? You don't have wings." This was the moment he was waiting for. "That's true," he said, a hopeful light in his eyes. "On my own, I am nothing. But together, you are everything. If each of you, in your great generosity, were to lend me just one feather, one you'd barely miss, then I too could have wings. My flight would be a testament to your collective kindness." The idea was genius. What was one feather? The eagle plucked a strong brown feather from his wing. The parrot, not wanting to be outdone, offered a brilliant green one. Soon, every bird, from the biggest hawk to the tiniest finch, came forward and gave a feather. Mbekwu carefully attached them to his legs and shell with sticky sap, and soon he had a chaotic, mismatched, but working pair of wings. He flapped clumsily and wobbled, but he lifted off the ground. The birds cheered. They were so proud of what they had done. Just as they were about to leave, Mbekwu held up a leg. "One last thing, my generous friends," he announced. "It is an ancient custom to take on new names for a great feast like this. I'm a well-traveled creature. I know these things." None of the birds had heard of this, but he said it with such authority that they just nodded along. "It's only right," he continued. "So for this journey, I will take a name to represent all of my brothers on the ground and to honor your generosity. From now until we return, you shall call me all of you." The birds thought the name was a little weird, but also kind of grand and funny. They laughed and agreed, each picking out a new fancy name for themselves. They were so busy congratulating themselves on their good deed that they completely missed the cunning glint in Mbekwu's eye. The final piece of his trick was in place. The trap was set. The journey to the sky was incredible. A huge flock of birds soared through the endless blue, and right there in the middle of them was the strangest sight: a tortoise flapping a patchwork of borrowed feathers. He was clumsy, and the other birds often had to swoop under him to give him a little boost, but he was flying. "Look at me," he cried, a little too loudly. "I'm a brother to the birds." The flock, still high on their own generosity, cheered him on. When they finally arrived, the sight that greeted them was breathtaking. They were in the realm of the sky spirits. The ground shimmered like polished marble, and the air smelled of honey and rain. In the center of it all was a table that stretched as far as the eye could see, groaning under the weight of a magnificent feast. There were mountains of fluffy yams, glowing fruits, and fountains flowing with golden palm wine. The sky spirits, tall beings made of light and air, came to greet them. The head spirit raised a hand, his voice like 1,000 tiny bells. Welcome, birds of the world. We are honored by your presence. We have prepared this magnificent feast for all of you. But before a single bird could move, Mbekwu bustled forward, puffing out his chest. Thank you for this incredible honor, he declared in a booming voice. The birds just stared, confused. Why was he speaking for them? Mbekwu turned to the stunned birds, a sly grin spreading across his face. My dear friends, he said, did you not hear our host? He said this feast is for all of you. And as we all agreed, that's my name. A shocked silence fell over the party. The birds' beaks dropped open. The sky spirits were bound by the sacred laws of hospitality and their own exact words. They couldn't object. Mbekwu turned to the feast. The custom here, he announced, making up another rule on the spot, is to serve the spokesman first. They'll serve you. He gestured to the birds, after I've had my fill. And so he began. He plunged his face into the yams. He cracked nuts with his powerful jaws. He tore into the juiciest mangoes, letting the sweet juice run down his chin. He waded into the palm wine fountain and drank until he was visibly swollen inside his shell. He devoured the entire feast, leaving nothing but scraps. And the birds who carried him there watched in horrified, hungry disbelief. Their kindness had been used as a weapon against them. Their generosity was rewarded with the ultimate betrayal. The feast was over. The magnificent tables were a wasteland of peels and bones. Mbekwu lay by the empty wine fountain, patting his bloated stomach, drunk on his own cleverness. He was no longer humble Mbekwu, he was the king of the feast. But his victory didn't last long. A shadow fell over him. It was the eagle, his eyes burning with cold fury. Behind him stood the parrot and the entire flock, their happy chirps replaced by a low, angry rumble. You are ungrateful and full of tricks, the eagle hissed. We brought you here out of kindness, and you repaid us with deceit. You used us, screeched the parrot. You used our generosity to feed your own greed. Mbekwu, still hazy from the wine, tried to laugh it off. It was just a clever trick, he slurred. A game. But the birds were done playing games. You came here on our wings, the eagle declared. You won't be leaving on them. He stepped forward and with one swift motion, plucked his powerful feather from Mbekwu's wing. The tortoise cried out. Then the parrot snatched back his green feather. This is for your lies, he shrieked. One by one, every single bird came forward and reclaimed what was theirs. The hawk, the dove, the tiny sparrows, they all took back their feathers until Mbekwu was stripped completely bare. There he stood, in his heavy shell, stuffed with food but utterly alone, with no way to fly home. He was stranded on a cloud. The birds turned their backs on him. Wait, he cried, panic finally cutting through his drunkenness. Please. How will I get down? The eagle glanced back, his eyes like chips of flint. That's your problem, trickster. You were clever enough to get up here. Let's see if you're clever enough to get down. And with a great unified beat of their wings, the flock flew away, leaving Mbekwu all alone in the silent, empty sky. Panic seized Mbekwu. The world below, once a distant map, was now a terrifyingly real and impossibly far destination. He was trapped. Desperate, he crawled to the edge of the cloud and shouted, "My wife! My wife! Can you hear me?" Far below, his wife was in their yard. She heard a faint voice on the wind and looked up. "My dear wife." Mbekwu yelled, his voice garbled by the distance. "I'm coming down. I need you to bring out all the soft things from our house. Pile up the sleeping mats, the pillows, the bundles of cloth. Make a soft pile for me to land on." But the wind twisted his words. Down on the ground, what his wife heard was, "Bring out all the hard things from our house." Confused but obedient, she did as she thought she was told. It was a strange request, but her husband was the clever one. He must have a reason. She dragged out heavy wooden mortars and stone pestles. She brought out his hoes and machetes. She gathered the biggest rocks from their farm and piled them high. From his perch in the sky, Mbekwu looked down and saw a pile growing in the yard. He couldn't make out the details, but he trusted that his soft landing was ready. Believing his cleverness had saved him one last time, he tucked his head and legs into his shell and jumped. He fell like a stone, the wind whistling past his shell. He aimed for the center of the pile, anticipating a gentle landing. He didn't hit with a soft thud. He hit with a sickening, explosive crack that echoed through the entire village. His shell, his smooth, perfect shell, shattered into 100 pieces. The pain was unbelievable. He lay there, broken, amidst the pile of rocks and tools. A village medicine man was called, and he painstakingly glued the pieces of Mbekwu's shell back together. He managed to save the tortoise's life, but the damage was permanent. His shell, once a perfect dome, was now a jagged mess of cracks and patterns, a permanent reminder of his greed, his betrayal, and his terrible fall. And that is why, to this day, the tortoise's shell is not smooth. It's a story etched into his very being, a lesson from the ancestors that he carries on his back for everyone to see. So this ancient tale is more than just an explanation for why a tortoise's shell is cracked. It's a profound warning, passed down through generations. It teaches us that cleverness without kindness is a dangerous weapon, and that greed can lead even the sharpest mind to its own ruin. It's a reminder that appearances can be incredibly deceiving. A humble exterior can easily hide a selfish heart. And that's why the elders say that while you can respect the tortoise for its patience, you should never ever fully trust one. His cracked shell will always be the mark of his betrayal. What lesson did you take from Mbekwu's story? Let us know in the comments below. And just so you know, I post stories like this every week, so if you don't want to miss out, well, you know what to do.